Welcome everyone to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Ludden, Vice President of Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. Working with the CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ Symposium, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Eric Herzog from the Infinidat, who's the Chief Marketing Officer, and Ken Steinhardt, the Chief Technology Officer, also from Infinidat. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Love talking to CDO.
Thanks, Robert. Glad to be here.
And Ken, we were having a chat beforehand about the moving on to the integration of storage solutions into the data centers AI ops. And I'd mentioned to you that this is the first time I'd actually heard of the term AI ops. And being not a deep storage guy, I wondered if you might be able to explain to the team your understanding or educate us on what AI ops means first.
Sure. First, to give credit where credit is due, the term was coined a few years ago by Gartner. And basically, it's in recognition of the fact that the world really has emerged and evolved to the point where conventional management of any aspect of IT, just fundamentally going forward, is not capable of being done well by exclusively humans anymore. There's just too many data points, especially in the world your readers live in, where they tend to deal with very large sets of data and large data analytics. There's just too much information and it's moving too fast and it's being used by too many applications in too many ways for a human to be able to keep up. Now, the history of traditional IT management has been very manual. You point and click, you inquire into something, you explore something, you query it. The world has evolved to the point now where there are just too many data points and they happen too fast. It has to be done by software. As a matter of fact, not only does it have to be done by software, but it has to be done by intelligent software, and hence the term AI for artificial intelligence, which is the front end of the term AI ops. The back end is operations. So the concept is really very simple. Instead of having the best and smartest people constantly sitting in front of a screen, clicking on icons, trying to figure out what's going on, that doesn't scale in today's world. It has to be done by software. And the best way to do it is with good software that uses artificial intelligence to be able to look for anomalies that otherwise a human never would have been able to catch or wouldn't have been able to catch as quickly. That's the essence of it.
Ken, your music to our listeners' ears, because we don't have the time, nor the staff. Right? I mean, the staff is pretty much the most, heavy, resource-intensive aspect to running, the organization. So if they can reduce down that, make it AI, it then increases the overall effectiveness of the business. Now, tell me, from your point of view, how is storage management different from overall IT management, and where does Infinidat fit into that space?
Boy, great question. In order to know where we are, I believe it truly helps to know how we got here and where we came from. So decades ago, when dinosaurs like me started in this industry, storage was really tightly integrated with individual systems. Every vendor's system was unique and proprietary, typically to that vendor itself, and storage was very much a second-class citizen. It was considered just a peripheral in a very CPU-centric world. And as such, from an overall systems perspective, people from an operational perspective cared about things like performance, like availability, like what resources do I have in capacity. But the only piece of that related to storage really was the capacity, because not only was all performance viewed from the system's CPU perspective, but storage was the slowest thing out of every possible component you'd have. And so it didn't even weigh into the equation back then. And it was just a very much second-class citizen. Move forward into the 1990s, we see the evolution of heterogeneous storage, now potentially moving storage out of the proprietary, locked into an individual vendor world. And now people want to potentially connect multiple servers, maybe even multiple different operating systems to a single storage system. That opens up a whole new can of worms for how in the world am I going to manage this? And we also saw, as a result, the evolution of storage networks to make it easy to collect and connect multiples of these storage systems to multiple different operating systems, multiple platforms. So actually, I went and dug something out as you were speaking here before, because it triggered something in my imagination. The very first storage management product in the history of the world, I actually had the privilege of writing the documentation on it and describing it in a product description guide that I literally just pulled off my shelf over here. You can't see this real well.
Hold it in front of you. Hold it in front of you.
There
you go.
goes.
Yeah.
But I opened to the page where I describe literally what I said in 1995, writing about the world's first ever storage management product. And I said specifically, and this is going to be a key trigger, easy access is provided to system configuration data and performance statistics through icons running on a personal computer. So basically what that meant is you had a PC, you could click on icons and you could see capacity, you could see performance, you could see what was connected to what in terms of configuration. And it ran on initially when it first came out, any kind of platform you wanted of any technology, as long as it was an IBM MVS mainframe. And that was it. Even though it was running on a PC, you actually required 3270 emulation to get at this thing. So it was a PC basically supporting mainframe storage management. Fast forward to today to how much things have radically changed since then. Today, the best enterprise storage systems in the market are more sophisticated than the total end-to-end systems that we had back in those days. And they need to be managed as standalone entities, connected to networks, which also need to be managed, connected to servers, which need to be managed. But we care about the same things. We care about performance. We care about availability. We care about what resources do we have and how are they being utilized. So storage management has now evolved to this term AI ops, because not only do we have now individual pieces that have to be managed, but they have to be managed at a level that a human being just can't possibly keep up with. And so as a result, we have a technology at Infinidat, basically within our InfiniOps world, called Infiniverse. It's a cloud-based environment that enables us to gather telemetry data from the entire fleet of our user systems out there. Never touches their data. The security is amazing on this, as you would expect and need to be. But we are able to gather information that lets us do predictive analytics to be able to potentially find issues that a human couldn't possibly catch in real time, that the system will catch an anomaly and say, you might want to take a look at this to avert issues before they become problems. And that becomes the key. And all of this ultimately leads to massively higher availability, which our customers expect to be absolutely nothing less than 100% continuous operations these days. Anything less than that is unacceptable, which is one of the reasons why we not only provide it, we even guarantee it. But we also can take it to the next level. Oh, capacity planning. Based upon the consumption rates that we're seeing things being used, we can tell you when and how you may need to want to consider alternatives to how your storage is added to and how it can be moved, as well as performance. Where and when might you want to consider even something that doesn't directly affect storage? Like, I can see that the storage, because it is so fast these days, is actually outpassing what you're getting on the server or network side. You might want to beef up your network a little. You might want to beef up your servers a little bit to be able to provide the entire environment. So this AI ops environment really has gotten huge. But the catch is the overall IT management still needs to be there. And as a result, you've seen the evolution of companies like ServiceNow and organizations like Vertana that address the overall big picture.
Do these overall IT management systems, do they link into Infinidat systems, the Infinidat universe?
Bingo, that's the key. And that's how, if you're to look at how to do this right these days, there's a couple of things. First, you do need the underlying components that are going to let your individual network, your individual servers, your individual storage devices do what they do well. But you have things like ServiceNow, ITOM, IT Operations Management Visibility, which can now integrate deeply to provide, through things like ServiceNow Discovery, direct visibility into all of our Infinidat, Infinibox storage systems. It gives us the ability to detect and understand what they are. It gives us the ability to have what we do at the lowest levels directly integrated into their CMDBs, their configuration management databases, so that they can see from an overall systems perspective, not only the entire big picture, but all of the same kinds of things that somebody would have wanted to see natively out of the storage. Same thing happens with Vertana. Their virtual wisdom integrates directly with our technology, so you can get the performance management and drill into, if there were ever an issue, Is it my server? Is it my network? Is it my storage? How do I remedy it? How do I identify it before it actually presents a real problem to avoid it? And the big benefit for users and customers out of these integrations becomes very simple. You can now identify and detect anomalies that become issues to deal with before they become problems. Much easier to deal with something that's identified as a quirk before it becomes a problem. It also means you can do predictive analytics to plan your entire IT infrastructure well. So to Eric's point earlier, which is a key one, we see customers that are reducing their spend and footprint in infrastructure, even as their data volumes grow. Now, let me say that again, because that is critical. Through these kinds of technologies and solutions, what if you know your data volumes are going to grow, but what if you could, instead of just adding more and more and more and more, actually consolidate, reduce your cost, massively improve the simplicity of the operations, and while simultaneously doing this, even improve your performance and reliability and availability of the total infrastructure at the same time.
And two other points that when I was listening to you that you'd mentioned. First of all, 100% uptime, and the second of all, a guarantee. Right? You know, you add them to your story, and it is a phenomenal success. Just Ken, in the last minute or two, again, there was one of the questions we talked about. In your opinion, which is the best and appropriate approach for integrating good storage management with overall IT management? You mentioned some of the integration components there, ServiceNow and the other one, but in your opinion, what's the best approach that you see?
Great question, and both you and Eric both hit on it, and it really ultimately does come down to this. Take things that people used to have to be forced to do manually in the past, which were tedious, time-consuming, and expensive. Let them do more interesting, value-added things for your organization, and allow intelligent software to now take over the role of identifying the issues and managing the vast majority of what goes on into that space, and let people do what people do best to add value to the organization. And from an implementation perspective of that software, the key is to recognize that two heads really are better than one. So using something like Infiniverse and our technology and our InfiniOps technology at Infinidat, coupled with these intelligent overarching technologies like ITOM, like virtual wisdom, give our users and customers the ability to basically sleep at night. 100% availability, consistency that they can meet their performance service levels, means the phone isn't ringing and people aren't complaining about issues. It results in happy users, it results in happy customers, results in happy partners, and it results in just an acceleration of the competitiveness of organizations that are able to do things like that versus people that still are mired in legacy, archaic technology.
Ken, happy users, happy life. Two heads are better than one. And speaking of which, maybe I'd like to bring Eric in here. I got one final question, Eric, and hopefully we can make this just kind of quick, but it's important. And you know, when I was reviewing your website, Infinidat, I noticed that you guys are really big on focusing on return of the business value to the customers by eliminating compromises, by increasing the performance, the availability, reducing the cost on a multi-petabyte scale for enterprise storage. Eric, how does Infinidat achieve that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, it's all about this autonomous automation software and all the software integration. We use commodity hardware. We don't do custom ASICs. We don't do anything custom. Now, we do have a tight design model, so we make sure that we optimize it, but it's really all about our software. And the key there is what we do to provide this autonomous automation so that the machine is learning and thinking on its own, so that the IT guys, the storage guys are freed up to managing higher level functions, as Ken pointed out. That is what we do. And part of that software helps optimize the performance. As I mentioned earlier, when you add new applications and you point it at our storage, we learn about those and we actually get faster and faster in just a couple of days without doing this tedious and time-consuming performance tuning. And same thing with management infrastructure. And of course, obviously, as Ken put out, integration with larger data center packages. So Our software is what really is the magic fairy dust that allows us to dramatically cut CapEx and OpEx, make operational manpower much easier for the customer, automate as much functionality as possible from a storage perspective, and then, of course, integrate that with the automation capabilities of AI ops across the data center, right? And integrate with those packages like a ServiceNow, VMware, et cetera, and really accelerate applications, workloads, and use cases. So the knowledge workers don't wait 5 hours for the report. It happens in 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And those are the types of things that we focus on and wrap that all with our white glove service, which, of course, as I mentioned before, has been put out in many, many of the analyst write-ups about us that end users talk incessantly about. We have the best support in the industry. By the way, a lot of that's based on our software and its capability of, if you will, self-diagnosing and self-healing our own storage systems before we even know there's a problem, let alone before a customer knows. So those are the things that really give that differentiation from that TCO and ROI perspective that you mentioned.
Eric, Ken, what can I say? Wow. If I need, storage that can be self-automating, self-looking after and reduce my costs, definitely going to give you guys a call. And on behalf of the CDO Magazine, I'd really like to thank you for your time today, sharing your knowledge and experiences. As you mentioned, 100 years of storage experience between the both of you. So that's a lot. And, we really appreciate that. We certainly hope that we'll have the chance to have you back and share your knowledge, perhaps, on what's going on the enterprise storage sector again, and talking about the white glove service. So, gentlemen, on behalf of the CDO Magazine, thank you.
Thank you. We enjoyed, again, being with CDO.
Thank you, Robert. Greatly appreciate it.
And again, for our listeners, please visit CDO Magazine for additional interviews.